Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Pineal Tribe podcast. The podcast where we pull apart and explore different aspects of reality, kind of centered around the personal development growth area of life, because we within the Pineal Tribe are all we call us growth junkies, I guess, doing everything we can to expand our consciousness as far as it will go. That seems to be a game we like playing. And for any of you who have joined us on previous podcasts, you will know that there are 5 founding members of the Pineal Tribe, and for each podcast, we generally have a different combination of the group in play. Today, we have myself, Nick Bell. Very nice to meet you if it's the first time. And I'm joined by the enigmatic Bjorn Lens. How are you, Bjorn?
Wonderful, thank you.
Wonderful to hear that. And some of you may know, if it's your first time, you may not know, one of the way that we pick a topic, essentially, and the way that we go into these conversations is we try not to plan anything too much. We wait until we get to this moment, pretty much, and then come up with a suggestion of something that we can talk about. And so far, it's worked quite well. Although it is funny, there's like an infinite amount of things one can talk about in life. We're only on episode 7, and I'm already feeling pressure to come up with good topics. Like 7 out of infinity. Like, what's wrong with me? But I like the way we do it like this, because so far the experience that I've had with these podcasts is they've been very natural. They've really unfolded in a very organic way. And I know that myself being a part of these conversations has been useful. There's been a huge amount of insight that's come through. So I like the fact that we do this. It is good. And what's bubbling up for me at the moment, which is interesting, is there is a piece around purpose. Now, that's very broad if I just throw that one word into the mix. So I'm going to give a little bit of context. So I've mentioned on previous podcasts and YouTube videos that about 6 years ago, I had somewhat of an awakening, and my whole life changed exponentially in that moment. And subsequently, it's been this phenomenal journey of remembering who I am and really getting to know myself and living more and more authentically. Now, when that very first happened, I started talking to different people, mentors, people who'd been on this path a lot longer than I had. And one of the common things that people would say to me, so what's your purpose in life? Now, before that point, my purpose had been going to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, like in order to go out at the weekend and have fun. Like, there wasn't really a driving purpose in my life. I wasn't a parent at that stage. I hadn't any of these other sort of aspects of life which have driven me to go and find purpose. I was kind of bumbling through life with my eyes closed, just going from one weekend to the next. And the idea of purpose, this fuel which lives within, which is this effervescent, infinite fountain of inspiration for you to drive you through life and create such happiness and such joy and such fulfillment. It was amazing as a concept to me. And then for the very first time in that moment, I started watching war movies with a completely different lens, because before that I'd seen war movies and I'd always thought, oh man, I'd hate to go to war. That looks absolutely terrible. Then all of a sudden I was connecting to something which was different. And I was connecting to the fact that while the environment they're in looks awful, these individuals, they have a purpose. They have this big, powerful purpose. And this purpose is driving them through war-torn, war-ravaged environments where death is a realistic scenario for them. And I just kind of fell in love with the notion of purpose. I was like, wow, to have something like that in life, something that means something so magnificent to you at such a deep level, seems just incredible to me. And the idea that I had of purpose at that time was that when I find my purpose, it's going to be there forever, and it will give me this constant source of fuel and enthusiasm and inspiration, and that will be it, you know, and then I'll be happy forever, you know, live happily ever after and all that stuff. And what is interesting, what I find interesting subsequently over these years, is that I very much aligned with a purpose, which is one of the reasons that us Pineal guys get on so well, because our individual personal purposes are relatively well aligned with each other. But something that I seem to identify in a lot of the people that I work with is that purpose definitely isn't, it doesn't seem to be, to me, something which once identified is a permanent fixture in one's life. It seems to be this kind of moving thing, this abstract, changing, shape-shifting thing within us, which when we move into alignment with it, brings incredible power. But when we move out of alignment with it, really starts to make us feel broken and disconnected. And I've been having, the reason this is bubbling up for me now is that I feel personally very connected to purpose, but I'm working with a couple of individuals who I see as really impressive elders, people I really look up to in many, many ways. And both of these particular people are struggling at the moment with a complete lack of purpose in their life. And these are very organized, well together, successful, intelligent individuals, benevolent, kind people. Yet this one piece missing seems to have driven both of them in their own way into apathy and lethargy toward life. So I've been thinking in and around the realm of purpose, and I'm interested to throw it into the mix because I think there's many layers to it. I think there's many different shades of perspective that we can adopt with it. So I think we can have a good exploration. But I also think that for the reasons I just mentioned, the fact that when we are aligned with it, it's so unbelievably powerful. And when we're not aligned with it, it has the ability to crush us. I think if we can get to a few points of insight on this conversation, I think it has the potential to be really valuable for us, really valuable for me in my conversations with those two guys, and potentially valuable for anyone else watching. So how does that feel? How does that land for you?
It's good. It's good. What I would like to share is, from my point of view, many people are looking at purpose from a slightly unfortunate angle, let's say. Most people, well, if you're happy with your purpose, if you live your life in satisfaction, that's a good sign that you're living your purpose. Then all's good. The question is, what if you're frustrated or dissatisfied? And that often has to do with purpose. But many people are looking for something to do or something to create, something that is very concrete, something that is easy to share. And from my point of view, that's not what purpose is about. Purpose in the abstract is basically being the best you can be. Of course, that doesn't help in the sense of, okay, then you still need a vision. What is that being? But if you tune into the energy of what you might be and what you might to create as change for the world as an effect of being that, that is when total satisfaction is available, and also the power to create whatever you mean, whatever you choose to create. And often it doesn't even have a huge thing. And on the one hand, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. And on the other hand, it can be many different things at the same time. For example, for many women, being the best mother they can be a wonderful purpose that gives them a lot of satisfaction and a lot of growth and a lot of fulfillment. And I didn't say everybody who has birthed a child has as a purpose to be the best mother that they can be, far from it. But if that is one thing that is something that resonates with you, then this is something to aspire to, and it can lead to satisfaction. Being a nice person doesn't feel that there's no grandiosity in it. Like at your everyday job, being nice, being caring for every person that is around you can be a being to aspire to, and it can be part of your purpose, and it is changing the world. And there's also the story of our shared mentor, Peter Sage, that I always like the story with the bumblebee that decides now it's time to find out my purpose, like flying around, going from flower to flower, creating honey. That's not it. I need to find my purpose. And therefore the bumblebee sits on the mountaintop, meditates for days and days and days to find its purpose. But if you look at the same story from a grander picture, you know, bumblebees are there because the plants need them to, missing the words here. And the point is, oftentimes, ego is searching for a purpose that is cool to tell your grandkids, but sometimes being you and embracing life is everything that is needed for satisfaction, for joy, for fulfillment. On the other hand, as Nick said, we share a purpose with the Pineal brothers. And yes, that's true. Like, I completely agree. We all share the purpose that everything that we need to be is the best we can be, but we also share a vision. And that vision then gives the unfoldment of ourselves, the growth that needs to happen, a direction. And so I would say we're not looking for a purpose per se, but we also look for a purpose. And if it calls us to be something great, then the purpose needs to be led by a vision.
Fascinating. I love the simplicity of the way you approach that, and I love the connection with satisfaction. And as I think about this now, you said something in there which was really quite insightful, and that is that sometimes we want our ego wants our purpose to be something that it'd be cool to tell our grandchildren about. I mean, that's just such a powerful statement, because if I thinking again about the conversations I've had recently, that's one of the lines that came up was, I live a great life, but you know, I feel devoid of purpose because I feel I should be living a magnificent life. And you know, that's interesting, right? Like, where's the definition? In that conversation with him, I pointed out that to 80% of the planet, he has a pretty magnificent life without even figuring out any details beyond that. But then I kind of come back to myself in those younger years where I had no purpose, and I was kind of introduced to this. And yeah, I definitely feel that my ego was present with it. I definitely wanted a really, really cool purpose to be able to tell people, oh yeah, what do you do? Well, I do this, but you know, my purpose is like, wow. And, you know, finding that really, really powerful thing. But I think, you know, we talk a lot about ego and the importance of ego, and where the ego can be like an incredible source for creating action and getting stuff done from a certain level of consciousness. And if I think back, it's almost like in those early days, like, would I have been overly interested with a purpose being just the mundane act of living? And I don't use mundane disrespectfully. Would that have been enough to really get me onto the path of realizing that at a deeper level? Perhaps not. Like, there was kind of this feeling of, at the time, trying to find this big, amazing purpose and trying to coddywomple my way towards it in whichever way I could. Like, it was made infinitely more fun by the fact that I kind of was playing this game of being a Jedi in training in my head.
I completely agree. And I would like to point out, dissatisfaction is not a wrongness. Dissatisfaction is a function of yourself to tell you that you need to look out for something. And an ego looking for a huge purpose, well, my point of view right in this moment is, if you're looking for a huge purpose for yourself, it's hard to find. If you're looking for a huge vision where you can play a part, that's way easier. But then it's not about yourself.
Yeah, that is way easier. And if I come back to my personal journey, because funnily enough, the first times I heard my purpose being read back to me, it sounds really weird. Let me just explain. I was in an ayahuasca ceremony in Ibiza, one of the early Pineal retreats. And I was in this very deep conversation with who knows. And during this sort of visionary experience within the medicine, and I asked, I'm seeking my purpose. I don't know what my purpose is. Like, can I have some clarity around this? I want to know what my purpose is. And I had no idea who or what I was asking the question, but it seemed like the sensible thing to do at the time. And then an answer came back to me. And I remember thinking, well, that's bloody vague. Like, I wanted you to tell me what to go and do, right? Like, and the interesting thing about that is, the reason I tell that part of the story is that the actual purpose itself was vague until I moved in a direction, that's not the right wording, until I started to craft vision around it. So it's really interesting that you bring the connection between these two things, because the purpose that I was told, right, in this ayahuasca thing was, your purpose is to play your role in raising the collective consciousness of humanity. So I was like, what does that even mean? I can't do anything with that, right? And yeah, it was so grandiose. It was like, what can I do with that? But it kind of, it touched me in a place, like I couldn't forget it. I couldn't forget that moment, and it was really, really prominent within. And it was only really when we then started having the more significant, substantial conversations around the pineal vision and what we wanted to do, which was like circa 6 months later, I think it was, again in Ibiza. And and all of this, that we started to craft a vision, a shared vision, and obviously myself, I then started to craft an individual vision within the shared vision. And then it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember what was said to me 6 months ago. Like, now this seems to make more sense. Now I can start to see a pathway. So it's kind of like, why am I sharing this? It's kind of like the purpose itself, for me at least, in that experience, was actually the less interesting part of it. Like, that was like the fast track to the end of the story, whereas the vision was the narrative that took me through it. It was the interesting part, right? It was the actual story itself, the experiential aspect of moving into that purpose. And I think that's really interesting, because I think it's really interesting for people looking to find purpose, like this relationship between vision and purpose, this fact that, you may be very well connected to your purpose straight away, you may not be, but finding a vision which would you say, so let's actually go through this properly. Let's say I'm a client, I'm a coaching client of Dr. Bjorn, and I come in and I say to you, Bjorn, I am utterly devoid of purpose in my life. I'm lethargic. I'm apathetic. I feel like I've achieved everything I can achieve. Anything else is just turning my wheels. I'm pretty unsatisfied with life right now. Like, do you think that helping me find my purpose would be, or a purpose would be a valuable thing to do? I mean, what would be your next steps from that
Well,
point?
my next step in this conversation, at least, is to make two more distinctions, because you gave me two wonderful cues. One thing is being the best you can be is, in my mind, synonymous with helping raise the consciousness of humanity. But for most people, that doesn't, like, many people just can't understand the second way. And as long as your purpose is not clear, like, there's an easy direction to take. The one thing everybody always can do to support the raising of consciousness of humanity is raise your own consciousness first. Read something that inspires you. Do something that brings you in high vibration, whatever that means to you. And if you know nothing, then sing, dance, and play with your body. Another distinction is purpose. For many people, purpose feels final, similar to vision. Like, this is this one thing that leads me somewhere in my life. There's one thing, and if I have figured that out finally, gosh, I can let go of the question. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this is not how purpose works, and this is not how vision works. They are, the vision is not the goal, not the target. The vision is the finger. No, the vision is the moon, so your finger has something to point to. The vision gives you a direction where to go. And with most visions, there will come time, maybe a few weeks later, maybe 20 years later, where the vision is just not inspiring you anymore.
Mm.
And the reason for that might be that it is achieved, but it might also be that the purpose of the vision is achieved. Like, you have walked the path that you needed to walk in that direction, and now it's time to look for a new direction.
Mm.
So if you're here and you're lacking purpose, the first thing I would go to is the internal guidance system. I already talked about that in another podcast. It is follow your joy. Follow the breadcrumb trail of joy. Because what we learn as children is, one, mom and dad will love you when you work hard at whatever you do. And when you play and enjoy yourself, yes, that's nice because we can spend time on our own. But you also need to do your work for school and all that. Your life cannot all be play and fun and joy. And what if that is a huge lie that we just everybody bought into? That something that's meaningful has to be hard. It has to be unenjoyable. Therefore, the key question is, what is it that you truly enjoy? And then for many people, the mind just jumps to, yeah, I enjoy painting pictures, or I enjoy playing the guitar, but I cannot make any money with that, and I want to work in a way that's aligned with my purpose. And that, from my point of view, there's still so many beliefs and points of view about that this cannot be combined. That it's very hard in that moment to work on that. And therefore, my guidance would be, okay, do both for a while and ask yourself, what's your purpose for that thing that gives you joy? What's your purpose for example, playing the guitar? And it might be total relaxation for your body so that your body is able to raise its consciousness. Okay. And suddenly playing the guitar is a huge part of fulfilling your purpose. Doesn't mean you have to earn money with that, but it might also be to really explore that process, how playing the guitar helps your body to relax completely. And then you can create something where you teach people how to relax completely playing the guitar in order to raise your consciousness. Short-term fix? No. But short-term fixes in terms of purpose are usually not the thing that we are built for.
I like
also
this. Go on, sorry.
Also, one fallacy looking for purpose is this thing of when you're looking for a vision where you feel joyful. Ego would like a vision where you are important. But the thing that brings the most joy, because it supports the raising of consciousness, is where your contribution is the biggest. Whether you're acknowledged for that contribution or not is not that important, because your true self knows, when I can contribute, I'm happy. Therefore, if you're searching for a vision, ask yourself the question, in what way can I contribute vastly?
Yeah, I think these two things, follow the breadcrumbs of joy, the inner guidance system, and where can I contribute? I mean, they're they're beautiful approaches to take with it. And something came to mind as you were speaking them. When I very first got with my partner Nina, we've been together 11 years, I think. I should know that, but we'll leave that one there. So we've been together a while, and when we very first got together, before I had my awakening moment, and I was still very much at that point getting a lot of ego stroking from the job that I had. I was like national account director for this global company. I ran my own office, which meant I got to have a load of people tell me how fantastic and important I was every single day. And, you know, it was pretty good. Like all these superficial things. I got to go to work in a beautifully tailored 3-piece suit every single day. That it was just pure getting all of my kicks and from that kind of that false aesthetic piece. And the interesting thing is that I had known for a long time that that role didn't give me joy. Like in the early stages of building a career, it did, because I like talking with people, and it was building a career in sales and communication and understanding the business world. And these things were all like really interesting at the beginning. Not so much towards the end, when I pretty much mastered the role and I was just then doing the same thing every day. So I knew for a while it wasn't bringing me any joy. But I felt at that time trapped by my own success, because I was earning good money and it's important, and any move felt like I was going right to the bottom of a ladder, and my need for significance was far too great at that point in my life to accept that step. But when I first started dating Nina, she was working, her area of expertise is working with children on the autistic spectrum. And when I very first met her, she was working 2 jobs. She would work as a learning support assistant in a school, a mainstream school in the daytime, like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And she would be supporting the one autistic child in the class, let's say. And then she would have a 90-minute break. And then she would go at like 5:30, 6 p.m. to a full-time lodge. Now, this is for children who are on the more extreme end of the spectrum and require 24/7 professional care and support. And she would go and work there until 11 o'clock at night. And she would do this every day. And at the time, my role was all about money. It was all about significance. And at the time, I remember her telling me this, and I was thinking, what on earth are you doing that for? Like, and I said to her, I said, like, with your experience, your qualifications, like, you'd easily earn 2 or 3 times that amount, like, and probably cut your hours in half. Like, I don't get it. Let's sort your CV out and let's kind of thinking that she didn't know these things, right? And then as I get into it, she was like, she said, I wouldn't leave my children. She said, there's just no way. Like, I'm there for them. They need me. And I give them everything I can. I don't care if someone's going to pay me more money. Like, I'm not interested. Like, and this was the contribution piece. And I remember hearing it at the time. And it made me feel so shitty about my job. So shitty, because she was contributing, and the notion of contribution in this way just was not really something I was commonly thinking about or regularly thinking about. And I just saw this pure joy, fulfillment, satisfaction that she had talking about this. And then I thought, like, well, what do I contribute? And I kind of went back to my job, and the company I was working for was a big global IT company, and they would go into big corporate companies, and they would refresh their whole server system and IT infrastructure and save a big corporation 7%. Like, so you kind of make the guy's job a bit easier. You save this mega rich company some money. Like, there's no real contribution to the good of humanity going on right there. And just having the comparison frame of my role next to Nina's role hit me. And, you know, my dissatisfaction for what I was doing grew at that time. But it's really interesting, I think, that you have connected those two pieces, that you've connected this crumbs of joy and this contribution piece. Because if I kind of think through my own experience, one of those things being present is really, really nice. But both of those things being present is a whole different level. So I think there's a really nice practical piece there that anyone listening who wants to play the game of connecting a bit more with purpose or whatever can, you know, follow the breadcrumbs of joy like that.
Yes.
Fairy tale images in my mind.
And I would like to reframe your story a little bit, because you set yourself onto my coaching chair. That time when you're working for that company, you now think you didn't contribute because it was just money. But you can also see it in two different ways. On the one hand, you were part of Nina's contribution because you allowed her a nice lifestyle for the work that is less paid, while I would say more directly contributing to people who benefit a lot from contribution. But on the other hand, it's also like you have a huge vision. You didn't have it at the time, but you do have it now. And as long as you were growing on that place where the universe had set yourself, everything was fine. You were satisfied because you were building the skills that you will need in your future, even though you didn't know in what context. And therefore, that job was a huge contribution to humanity, because the vision that you will fulfill in your lifetime is a huge contribution for humanity. And that job was part of your training for that role.
Yeah, no, thank you for the reframing there. And like, in retrospect, I completely agree. Like, if I sit and look at it.
And what I like most about that is, in the moment you had fulfilled that purpose, that part of your journey, the moment you stopped growing in that job, normally we would think, well, when I finally mastered all this and this is not that tedious anymore. I can just sit here and wiggle my thumbs and then I'll be happy. Doesn't work that way, because in that moment you get really dissatisfied because your job there is done.
Yes. I remember when I very first went into that business, and I had a mentor within the business who was a superstar in the company, and he said this thing to me. He said, you will be successful, 100% you're going to be successful. The question is, how quickly will you get there? Will you waste your time and take 5 years, or will you work your ass off, do everything I tell you to do, and do it in 18 months? And I was like, you mean all my dreams will come true in 18 months? But I accepted the invitation and worked my socks off. And yeah, that is such an amazing thing for you to point out. It's like because I can remember so vividly the conversation with him, where he's pointing at some of the other, they used to call them veterans in the business, who had got to that level. And the funny thing is, he was pointing to them, and he was kind of talking about them in a way like, well, he hasn't got it all figured out. He messed up with this and he messed up with that. Like, he was kind of being a little bit throwing daggers at these people. But I remember at the time, just because these people had got to the end of this particular pathway that I was on, right, that I at the time thought was the pathway to the happy ever after, like I just couldn't conceive in that moment of, hold on a minute, you got to this level, how isn't everything in your life perfect? Like, I don't understand that. Like, I was so naive as to the process of it. But yeah, I think that the reframing you did, one of the reasons I was so grateful for you to do that is because I think that there's huge value to be taken in that, and I've personally taken huge value in that, because if I look back at some of the earlier stage of my career, like when you're in a role that has its foundation in sales, like the way you get good at that is you just have to do the crap. Basically, you just have to do the really hard work. You have to do the middle of winter, knocking on doors. Hi, can I come and talk to you about? Okay, I will F off. Thank you very much. Hey, can I? Okay, I will F off. Like, and it's 150 times a day. Like at one point in my career, not the corporate side, it wasn't so much that, but I've done that whole door knocking piece, and I've middle of winter, or getting to a Thursday afternoon and you're on like a commission only role, like, which I have had before, commission only weekly pay, right? And as an 18-year-old, I was like, that sounds amazing. Until like the first Thursday I got to, I hadn't made a sale, and I realized I was just about to finish a week of doing loads of work for nothing. Like, and the reason I raised this is at the time I judged myself for finding myself in those situations. Like, I used to say to myself, and if you would have done this different before, you would have done that different before, then you wouldn't have to be doing this right now. I would tell myself that I was less intelligent than other people, tell myself that I didn't deserve these things other people did. That I even used to have this story that I used to tell myself, where I used to say there was something wrong with me as a person. There was something wrong with my soul. I was a horrible person, and that's why horrible people, and that's why I'm experiencing difficult situations. Like, I was a proper bitch about it. I would really go at myself with this self-judgment. And I'm so delighted all of that happened. And I definitely see the incredible value in it, and the contribution that I was making, but also the contribution that I was making, not just to things around me, but like you said earlier, into my own purpose, into laying the foundations which are going to be there to take me forward. And in moments like if I, because I now see my life through that lens, that everything is happening for a reason, and everything is essentially setting me up to go where I need to go and be where I need to be. I now find myself, like, if I'm having to do something that I'm not necessarily enjoying, or I'm like, I then find myself playing this game of thinking into the future, thinking, well, I'm having to do this for a reason. I wonder what this is going to lead to. And it starts these fun little inquiries into, wow, I wonder what that could unfold into. So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating piece.
Yeah, and it also leads wonderfully into another purpose fallacy. When you're looking for purpose, it's very vital that you're clear about that what you're looking for is that you are satisfied with yourself, that you feel satisfaction, that you feel fulfillment.
Mm.
What do I mean by that? Suppose there's a lady who has 3 wonderful childs. Her father is a medical doctor, her mother is a lawyer, and she knows in her heart everything that she needs to be doing to be happy is create a wonderful upbringing for her children. Unfortunately, her mother always tells her, no, you need to be important in a huge corporation. Her father is always dissatisfied anyways because she didn't study medicine. And therefore she's looking for her purpose in her life that finally satisfies both of her parents. That is never going to happen. And
Mm.
that's not the point. Like, nobody's purpose in life is to satisfy their parents. Nobody. There may be 2 people to satisfy. One is you, and one is God, which is also you. And whenever you're when you're, for example, looking for a job that fulfills you, and you're trying to figure out if those people doing this job are happy, it's very hard. It's very hard to judge from the outside, and it's even hard talking to them because most people will tell you the story that they are happy because that is a story that they tell themselves,
Mm-hmm.
except when they are alone in bed.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing you're looking for is finding what satisfies you, not what society sees as a valid purpose or vision or job or work, but what is it that your heart longs to be in this world?
Mm. Mm. I think it's interesting, the societal expectation piece. And when I say societal expectation, of course, I'm talking about what society thinks we should be doing with ourselves, and but then family expectation, cultural expectation, religious expectation, whatever it might be, right? These expectations which are placed around us, because they're so powerful. Like there's such a need as a human being to be accepted, I think, isn't there? To be acknowledged, to be a part of, you know. And the sort of conformity to purpose is, I think, one of the biggest things that people do, or bending their purpose to conform with the cultural will. Because just from my experience in the city, I would say that 75% of the people that I ever came in contact with, and I think that's being really conservative, hated what they were doing in one way or another. They might have liked the actual role, but or an aspect of the work or something, but they'd been sucked into it, and they were either, you mentioned the parents there, they were either appeasing, success hungry parents or whatever we want to call that, or they had just kind of, you know, bought into this whole society thing. I had to do this, and then I had to go to university, and then I had to do that, and have my own apartment by this age, and and if I'm not ticking these boxes, then I'm not good enough. I can't be accepted into those circles. And it's such a shame, because there's such a false happiness, isn't it?
It's a false happiness, and in the end, like we waste a lot of energy trying to control what other people think of us. And
Mm.
I would like to share a story that might, if you tune into it, you might get something. When I got to my first ayahuasca retreat, I was at that point, I was leading a startup company. and I was very much in the business world. And I met a guy there who was supporting the ceremonies playing the guitar. So Egon, if you ever know that, hi.
Mm.
If you ever watch this. Beautiful guy, beautiful all around, yoga teacher, everybody liked him and all of that. But I know at one point I thought, that's a pretty poor fellow in the sense of he's just traveling from retreat to retreat, playing music at ceremonies, teaching a little bit yoga, didn't have a lot of money, has a very modest lifestyle. And at that moment, I came from the business world. I had a lot of money. I was thinking, that's a pretty poor chap. I like him, but maybe at the next retreat, maybe a year later, I saw him regularly every 6 months. I don't know. But I know at one different time when I was a year further along my journey, I looked at the same chap, same guitar, probably, I don't know, same yoga. And I thought, well, he has the coolest job ever. He just travels around all the time, playing guitar at ceremonies, doing yoga with amazing people. Jesus Christ, he has the coolest job ever. Another 6-12 months later, I'm on my journey, he's on his journey. But now I just see him struggling sometimes, coddywompling through life, let's say. But I can see he is just on his journey, trying to be the best he can be, giving everything that he can to support the raising of consciousness of the world in exactly the way that is right for him.
Mm.
And the point is, he was very similar on all three occasions. Well, he is on his path. He is growing, yes. But what other people think and how other people judge if you are on purpose or off purpose, if you are walking towards your vision or away from any vision that is the correct, the right vision for you, nobody knows except you. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks.
Mm. Yeah. And this is a challenge, isn't it? It's such a challenge. One of the our shared mentor you mentioned earlier, Peter, he would talk about when one wants to, the fastest way to upgrade your life is to upgrade your peer group, I think is his actual quote. And I remember at the time thinking that felt really harsh, didn't quite understand the essence behind it. But even if one isn't choosing to actively go out there and adjust their peer group, like it's such a common thing in the people I speak with, people who've made a significant change, who, like, had this moment of really connecting to their authenticity, a moment of really connecting to their purpose, and they subsequently changed their lives. It's such a common thing for the people that had always been around them to just fall away, like to just kind of disappear. And I've spoken to countless people thinking about it who have spent years with kind of one foot inside their authenticity and one foot outside of it, because the one foot inside of it is there because they're like, this is what makes my heart sing, but the one foot is still in the old world, essentially, because it's kind of keeping those connections in place to the things that they've become attached to for one reason or another, by virtue of being in that old world for so long. And it also reminds me of these memes that we see, where you've probably seen them. There's a side-by-side picture someone's looking very organized and composed and clean and lovely, and the other one they're looking like a disheveled mess. And the words above the top are what I thought my spiritual journey would look like, what my spiritual journey actually looks like, right? And I think that connecting to one's authenticity, connecting to a grander purpose, or connecting to any purpose, I think is one aspect. At least it was in my spiritual journey. Like, it was one aspect of that growth period. But it was also one of the most challenging aspects. Like, it took me like 4 years, 5 years to get to a point where I actually really started to feel like, oh, I'm kind of like me now. Like, there'd been this transitory phase, and you probably remember that phase. Like, every 6 months we would see each other or something, I would look totally different, right? It was just, I was in this seeking period. And one of the reasons that I found it so challenging is one of the huge benefits of moving to Tenerife, because I just removed myself from most of the challenges, just ran to a safer place to do my work, basically. But one of the challenging things was it was getting over what people thought of me. It was, I know what makes me feel really good to be. Like, I know what that is. I know how I feel my happiest. But in doing that, like, what are they going to say? What's he going to say? Like, are they going to call me out for being a charlatan because I used to be different, not realizing that I've changed? Are they going to want to talk to me again? I wonder what they're saying about me behind my back, like, and all of this crap, basically, right? Like, because who cares, even if people are talking about you? Right? It's thank you for the attention. But it was one of the most challenging things for me, is to really connect and move into that. And I would say that I still have these moments now, like, where I'm pulled back. Like, I released a video on my Instagram the other day where I was talking about cycles and the cyclical nature of reality in different respects. And one of the cycles that I referred to, that I experience, is where I kind of cycle between these states of being, and like my introvert state and my extrovert state. And when I'm in my extrovert state, like, I'm always messaging the groups. You can't shut me up when you talk to me. Like, I want to take on every single challenge and whatever. And when I'm in my introvert state, like, I don't want to talk to anyone, like anyone. I've actively told you lies in the past to cancel a call because I've been in an introvert state, and I've said, oh, Bjorn, I think my power's cut, or something like this, because in those moments, I can't even bring myself to say to somebody, I'm feeling a bit down, I can't speak. I just can't do it. And I will go, and I used to really judge myself for going into those moments. And it's only really been doing work that I just observe that there is a cycle there, that sometimes I need to be in a nurturing space with myself. Sometimes I need to be out there, my sword and shield, doing what I need to do. And allowing these different states of being to cycle is actually incredibly therapeutic. Anyway,
especially for you.
Especially for me, yeah.
Especially for you. Like, quick tangent.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different kinds of people. If you are one of those people who likes to do research, have fun with human designs, but you as a guide, you don't have this constant power source where you can just go on and go on, go on, go on. Your power is limited. Therefore, you can only spend so much on a day, and then it's out. And you can nothing, like, you can extort your body, you can force yourself, and nothing good will come out of it. And that is a huge difference between what's called a guide and what's called a creator. Therefore, it's a choice to judge yourself for that, but you can also let it go.
Yeah, and this is what I share in that video. It's that there used to be a judgment point, because culturally and from a society perspective, my extrovert state is probably more welcome, because it's the one that goes out there and kicks ass and gets stuff done, the action taker kind of energy. My other state just wants to, like, shut the curtains and not speak to anyone and do anything that is like, if anything is remotely productive, like, not interested, just let me burn my time, let me burn a percentage of my life right now. And anyway, the reason I share that is when I am in this introvert state, I am often a lot more sensitive, like I go into a hypersensitivity. And it's one of the reasons I can't even look at people. Um, so I go into a hypersensitivity and I become very, very aware of these different points of discomfort inside myself. And allowing myself to go into this introvert, this checking out state kind of thing, I become very aware of my relationship to my authenticity. Like, so I'll be able to I'll be able to see very clearly moments, like almost on a moment by moment basis, like where I was completely just in alignment with what it is to be me. And then other moments where I haven't been. And the funny thing is that when I'm in that state and I'm feeling that, those moments where I'm out of alignment, it's like daggers to my heart. Like I look at it and it makes me go, oh. But the moments where I'm totally aligned with myself, there's still this kind of fear thing attached to it. Like, what if they say something about me? Like when I see it in that space. So the reason I wanted to share that is that even for somebody like myself who has done a huge amount of work on letting go of what people think and has completely changed my life, every aspect of my life in the last few years based upon moving toward my purpose and following my purpose, like being that authentic and really expressing myself in that same way is still like super terrifying a lot of the time. You know, it still brings that shudder of potential judgment or scorn, or the shudder at the anticipation of the potential judgment or scorn which would come of it. um Even though I know how that is the place I need to be, you know.
And that implies a wonderful question. Why is it so hard to be on purpose, to know one's purpose, to know one's vision, and to live that? And that, as so many things, goes back to childhoods. When we are 1.5, we are completely ourselves, like slowly starting to walk and getting fat whenever we're hungry, and we're just being ourselves. Maybe sometimes earlier, but from then on, it gets to the point where the parents have the need, or at least feel the need, that they have to organize you in the sense of don't cry now. No, you're not getting your food now, you get it later, and all of that. But as a child, you have the needs. You're still completely in alignment with yourself. You know what your body requires in that moment, but you're told being you is wrong. But the one thing you strive for most in that moment is the love of your parents. Evolutionary, because it's part of your being. Those are the ones that where you are longing for love. And therefore you start to embody, to start to put into your body, whenever I'm completely me, I'm wrong, I have to fulfill their expectations to be right, and then I'm loved. And
Yeah.
this is a game that's playing out over the whole life. And the struggle with coming back to purpose is basically undoing that game.
Mm. Mm.
And to undo this game, it's good to have, well, rules, have some principles about what supports you finding your purpose and what doesn't. For example, everybody who tells you this is the way to go, ignore it. because that is looking for the support that you get as children, as your parents, somebody else who tells you how to be. There's only one person who knows how to be, and that is you. And everybody who tells you to be something different, I'm not saying they are malicious in any way. They are taking their reality, project it onto you, and say, well, if I was you, this. Thing is, they are not you. You is only you there is. So I'm not saying if somebody tells you this is the way to go, cut him out of your peer group immediately, never talk to that person again. If they do it a lot, might be wise, but I'm not telling you that. I'm just telling you, be careful what you listen to.
Yeah. Yes. There's something there for me. And I think this is a really, really important point that you make. And I've always had an aversion to people in kind of like the teaching space when it comes to this. Like if someone's teaching me how to fly an airplane, like I want them to be pretty precise with what they're telling me I need to do, right? But something in the more abstract realm, like finding purpose, like the use of the word should makes me kind of shudder. It's like a little red flag for me. I said that, now I'm like thinking, how much have I said should in this podcast? So yeah, there's that piece, but there's also another, and I come back to this interesting, I come back to cycles. You know that I love observing cycles in different ways that I engage, and the cycles that and the patterns in the universe that I enjoy the most are the patterns which are observable when I inquire into the relationship between me and that which I perceive to be not me. So like this borderline, if you like, which only exists at some levels, as we know. But the interesting piece here is that one of the cycles I see is I go through these very distinct cycles where in which in moments I just want to consume information. Like I'm just ravenous for information, amazing quotes, incredible books, inspiring videos, whatever. Not podcasts, I hate those. But only joking. But then there's other times when like I simply just I can't watch anything. Like it's almost like it's an invasion into my soul, like to watch anybody else giving information. And I've inquired into that a number of times, like, and I wrote this article called Creation versus Consumption, which I never released. It was just me exploring it for myself. And I feel like it's like an inner system. It's an inner system which kind of knows when I'm walking my path and I'm sailing in the right direction, and I'm able to guide myself. But also an inner system which knows when to put up the periscope to have a look for something which may be out there, which I either need to create some kind of inspiration or as a catalyst for something or whatever it may be. And again, this is one of these things that I used to battle with at the start, because like some days where I just couldn't pick up a book and read it. I'd be like, man, you're stupid. Like, just completely derail myself for it. But again, it's observing this cycle. And the reason that I mentioned this is that I don't fully understand this cycle it's still part of my inquiry. But one thing I do understand about this cycle is it seems to at least in my experience exist for the purpose of um, allowing me to move forward in the most authentic way, because it kind of seems to filter or at least ring fence those times when I'm bringing information in, but then also seems to separate another time when it's almost like more information isn't going to be useful, because I don't just want to be a storage house for other people's ideas, right? So there seems to be this really beautiful cyclical relationship between consumption and creation, which, at least from my part, seems to actually help to drive me forward in a way which is authentic and balanced for myself.
Yes. With respect to you, as we have already mentioned it, I'll just mention it again. It's perfectly in line with your human design, in the sense of you are consciously what's called a hermit, which is somebody who likes to spend time alone and ingest as much information and knowledge as he can. And you're an unconscious, I call it networker, which is somebody who goes out and shares, not even directly, might be energetically, whatever he has ingested, whatever he has come up with, whatever has changed his being, so that that change can radiate out and do something for the world. But from the cycle perspective, this might be something that is also very much a good thing, a constructive thing to point out. When you have found your purpose, when you think you have found your purpose, if you have a day where you really don't want to have anything to do with that, that doesn't mean it's not your purpose. Just means this is a day I just don't want to have anything to do with that. If you have figured, if someone has figured out your purpose is to be the perfect mother, and then you have a day where you just cannot stand your children and they are just getting on your nerves and you just want to get away, doesn't mean you're not supposed to be the best mother you can be still. Just means sometimes you need a break. Break for fresh air, break for new thoughts, a break to grow from the muscles that you trained every day, growing into that direction that you chose. And it's also something where you can, well, I wouldn't say burn your purpose, but where you make it more difficult for yourself than necessary. If you say, well, I finally figured out my purpose, now I make a plan, 14 hours a day, I'm working on my purpose now for the next 200 years, and then I'll be happy. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It reminds me of something you said to me 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And it was different, slightly different context at the time. I was dealing with something really, really challenging in my life, which was just about to explode, basically. And it was on the moments before the explosion. I don't know if you remember, I was in Warsaw, and we had a conversation on a video call, and I was very emotional. Yes, I was very emotional. And I remember you said something, it's okay to run away sometimes. And I remember at that moment, it was really, really useful in the context of that situation for me anyway. But it's been, as is the case, someone says something to you which is 5 words long that maybe they don't even remember they ever said to you, but like some things just stick with you, right? Some things just like they're there. And that sentence that you said to me, that short quote that you said to me, it's been ever present in this kind of exploration of these cycles between, these primary states of being that I seem to um, inhabit. And we talked in the last podcast, episode 6, about comfort zone, and Demir made a really amazing point in there, where he talked about sometimes retreating back into the comfort zone, and the maternal warmth of that is what's needed before you can pick yourself back up again and go out. And this relationship between the two, and the symbiosis of inside and outside of that comfort zone, are where the magic really happens. And as I kind of look at this scenario as well, it's very much the same. It's the relationship between the two is beautiful. And it's that relationship between, I love it when we find relationships between things, like earlier when you pointed out joy and contribution in terms of tuning into purpose. I think that's so beautiful, because when we combine these things and when we bring these understandings together, it's when we can really make a substantial, significant change. And I think it's very nice. And based upon that comment there about the joy and the contribution, there's something really interesting. There's an interesting train of thought, which I'm not going to go into now because it's not fully developed, and I'll probably just waffle incoherently for a couple of minutes, like I have been doing for a lot of the call. But I found that fascinating as well. And I think on the topic of purpose, I think I'm coming close to being complete for this conversation at this point. I think the key things that I would want to summarize, at least summarize my part of the sharing, or summarize my observations of the call so far, are, from my experience, the importance of having purpose, and the experience of having purpose versus not having purpose, really, for me, is a big thing. I think also you made the most beautiful point about, it's usually the ego that wants the purpose to be something which gives significance or importance. I think that's another really, really big piece. I love the story about the bee, because it's like we often are not aware of the bigger impact that we're having on the world around us just by doing our day-to-day activities. And I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. And finally, I think this piece, if anyone's watching this and they're feeling like, they want to establish a deeper connection to their purpose, or whatever that may be, the exercise you gave, I think, feels really, really like a really clean, beautiful way to do it. Following the breadcrumbs of joy, and then identifying these opportunities to genuinely contribute. I think it's very beautiful. So, yeah, I think they're my golden nuggets from this conversation. Thank you for delivering me a big box of nuggets. They were tasty. How about you? What do you need to share to be complete? What's there for you?
I would like to close with the following comment. Like this nagging feeling of not being sure what the purpose is, or being in a job and knowing that is not it, but desperately searching for a purpose. It's common, and if that is your thing, you're not wrong. It's completely okay. And if that is the case, I have 2 suggestions. Visualize Nick in winter knocking on doors, trying to sell what the fuck ever, and know there's a good chance that you're just prepared for something that's coming later in your life, and it's okay. Yet also follow the breadcrumb trail of joy. And that doesn't mean, yes, I'm doing that for 2 hours, but I still don't know my purpose. Enjoy your life. Something beautiful will come out of it.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. Well, on that note, that very beautiful poetic note, I think we are complete for this podcast. thank you for joining us on whichever platform you chose to tune in on. If you are listening to us and you were not aware that we had a YouTube channel, you can go there, and you can also have some visuals to go with the audio. Just go into YouTube and search the Pineal Tribe. There should also be a link in the description below the video. Actually, no, that would be on YouTube, wouldn't it? So no, just go into YouTube and search the Pineal Tribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to go and check it out on Spotify or Audible or Apple Podcasts, whatever tickles your fancy, then links in the description to go and follow us on there. And I think as with any moment like this, like if you have any feedback, anything you want to share with us, you can feel free to reach out to us, nick@pineal.org or bjorn@pineal.org. Alternatively, you can find me Pineal_Nick on Instagram, and I respond pretty quickly on that platform as well. So if you have any suggestions, any feedback, any comments, anything like that, let us know. Otherwise, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.